Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, Cammy. Welcome back, Cammy. Hello.
Thank you, Bryant. Hello to you.
How are you doing today?
Super fantastic. How are you?
We're hanging in there. We're going, a couple weeks in already. It's kind of hard to believe. Really fun topic last week, though. I thought that was really great. And just to roll right into it, I think we've got a great one for this week, too. We're going to be talking about the legendary bird, or birb, as it's known on the internet, the phoenix, which is great. And I'm so glad we're doing this, Cammy, because you can't Google it, and Google will just be like, Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
There's something that predates that by a few years. That's what we do here on Mythstorie. We like to talk about not Phoenix, Arizona, but Phoenix, the mythological bird, as well as other Roman, Greek, but many more myths. And I think the thing I'm most excited about the Phoenix, Cammy, I don't know if you got this in your story, your research, is that it's calling it Greek is not. It's not really there. I mean, in a way, but there's more to it than that. And I'm really excited to discuss that soon. But first, you will regale us with a story, a tale. So please hit us with your Phoenix story.
Awesome. I will. So I was telling Bryant earlier that with my research, there's a lot on it, but it's all sort of the same.
Yeah.
So I used several different sources here. I used hideandrug.wordpress.com, which had the Herodotus translations on it. Theoi.com, which I know Bryant is a huge fan of, for Ovid's Metamorphosis. Perseus.tufts.edu, Pliny the Elder, Natural History, and a book called The Phoenix by Joseph Negg.
Did Celtic wedding rings have anything on the Phoenix? No. Did they cover us this time? All right, I just wanted to...
No, they didn't. Okay, so from the hottest flames this bird is formed, like Helios himself, born of fire. The baby bird does not feed on worms like most, or grains or seeds, but feast upon drops of frankincense and cardamom. He grows so big his wings, when stretched, obscure the sun. For 5 centuries he grows, stronger, larger, and weary of his time. And as the end of those long years approach, he uses his talons and beak to build a nest atop the tallest palms, scented with the bark of cinnamon and myrrh. And in his perfumed home, he lies and refuses to move even his head in his deep and peaceful slumber. In the tales of Egypt, they say his nest is instead built upon the temple of Ra after so many years, and he does not sleep in his nest, but makes an egg of myrrh, so large and grand he is almost unable to transport it, and buries himself, or perhaps the body of his father, inside. This brilliant bird, with golden neck and purple body, his tail blue, and vibrant red long feathers cresting from him, this lonely bird who would never meet his father, but becomes him. This bird brings with him a promise. For after his years are spent, and he builds his nest, and he rests or doesn't, the flames of the sun engulf him. He is burned in a fire so hot no mortal being and no normal egg could survive. He, however, is tempered in these flames, like the blade of a weapon, his body molded and formed into something new. And the break of day, a little bird, sooty and singed, emerges from his own undoing. And the little thing, when his wings can carry his weight, picks up his nest and brings it to the foot of the temple as an offering to the sun. And it is this image of restoration from the ashes, of a bird rising amidst the flames, that shows us hope will prevail in our darkest times, that though we feel all is lost, there is always a way to emerge, not unscathed, not unburdened, nevertheless renewed.
Oh, I got that pun, unburdened. You can't fool me. That's great, Cammy. What a wonderful story. Yeah, I didn't realize the Helios, I mean, it makes sense, was so intertwined with Phoenix and Greek culture and such.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
Right, which totally, Helios, the sun, the phoenix, obviously, it goes in. Pop quiz to listeners and to you, Cammy. What is the name of Dumbledore's phoenix?
I know this. I'll give people a second.
3, 2, 1. Cammy,
Fox.
there you go. All right, that's the show. Congratulations. It's funny. Kinley is into Harry Potter now, and we just watched that. We're reading and watching like as we go, and we just watched the second film, and it was fun seeing him and just the timing of it all. And that kind of sums it up in a nutshell. And that I love that the best thing about the Phoenix is the cyclical nature of it, and that has fire, rebirth. That all has like that has a deep meaning throughout history, not just something that we understand today, but throughout history, the cycle of life. It totally makes sense when there are natural fires that happen everywhere at all times. I mean, unnatural, of course, but and what comes from that is more life and stuff. So, and the Phoenix is definitely a personification of that. I want to start because I actually I'm not trying to like tout my own listening. I like to have an audiobook that I'm listening to at all times, just while I'm driving and cooking and cleaning and laundrying and stuff like that, especially at home. And I'm listening to a really great book right now. They're part of the Great Courses in History, or hold on, what is it? Like the Great Courses is what it's called, right?
I've heard of that.
Yeah, they're usually pay for them, and yeah, the Great Courses. It's and then there's the Great Courses on tons of different stuff. And I'm listening to one by Robert Garland. It's called Greece and Rome: An Integrated History of the Ancient Mediterranean. And I just a tip, if anyone wants to, I have a library card here, and I can connect it to Hoopla, hoopla.com. And I can listen to this for free too. I don't have to pay any money. And I've done this with a few other things. I've talked about him before, not as much, but Robert Garland, he's like a super professor on ancient classics, Greek, Rome, all that, but going into like the modern age Byzantium and stuff like that. He gets it very much so. And he's a really great instructor. And what's really cool about listening to this is specifically talking about the relationship between Greece and Rome and the evolution over time. And I say this because that's really kind of where the Phoenix, this is the Phoenix. The Phoenix myth is very old. It's very deep, and it takes form. Yes, like the Greeks were first, and then the Romans, but there was a lot of borrowing. There was a lot of back and forth. We have Phoenician and Persian and everyone else that was in that area, and so and one thing you can't really miss whenever you start looking into the Phoenix is the related depictions that are around, or the analogs, the analogous creatures and mythological beings in other cultures. And there's tons of them. And it's kind of easy to think. I mean, it's a bird, but there's pretty specific, because with the Phoenix, there's the fire, there's the rebirth, and interestingly enough, like the colors of fire that seems to kind of go through over time. Now, the cool thing is, though, we do have some sources. We have people like Herodotus in the 5th century BC, even writing. He was a great Greek historian, one of the most important. The Greek poet Hesiod, 100 years before that, in the 6th century, also writes on him. And Herodotus actually, his writings are really clear. This is something that the audiobook I'm listening to mentions a lot, is Herodotus, and his name has popped up a lot throughout our show. But he was writing on the Egyptians. He was like talking about the Egyptians. In the Mediterranean, they were always the Egyptians were very much a part of that, and they were the grain, the breadbasket of Rome later, as well, as what they were kind of called. So that Egypt always had a big relationship with the Mediterranean. And he wrote about them and this bird, and kind of saying how it's really hard to see, but it's that, and then kind of describes what we know as the Phoenix. So it seems like the roots of it really kind of begin in Egypt. But like how we've talked about when we talked about Medusa and Gorgons, Gorgon, that creature, just like Greek myth, is super ancient, like 15th century BCE and beyond. These way beyond what we when they decided to start writing it through Homer and things like that. So it looks like the phoenix is just as old. And if we had to kind of give it a starting point, Egypt would be kind of the best bet. And it's just so interesting because one of the sources I use, New World Encyclopedia, it has a great way of summing it up. Is the most universal characteristic is the bird's ability to resurrect. That's such a specific thing that it can do. And it seems like a rule, like it can only be, there's only one around. It's around for a long time when it is around, but it will cycle. It will die and then come back. And it looks like that the earliest source regarding ancient Egypt is the Bennu bird, relating to the word weapon, which means to rise brilliantly or to shine. So there's some nice etymology there. In Wikipedia's etymology section, of course, kind of the word phoenix we get from Latin, which our modern version was reinforced by French as well. And during the Middle Ages, it took on a big meaning. It meant like an excellent person. It was also in a variety of heraldic emblems in the 15th century throughout. It was on things, and then the name of a constellation by the 17th century. So it kind of persisted always. And I think like the Renaissance and the mid to late Middle Ages going into the Renaissance really helped that. I'm sure those texts started flowing around. Pretty bird called phoenix. Boom, it makes sense, you know? But specifically, the Latin word comes from the Greek word, and it's to kind of enunciate it a little bit. Phoenix is, I think, what the pronunciation would be in Greek, and that Greek word is first attested to Mycenaean Greek, ponike, which, you know, it kind of works. This word, though, probably meant griffin, but Wikipedia, it just ends on this. It says, though it might have meant palm tree, and then it just stops. It doesn't go on further there. So
well, that makes sense if it's nesting in a palm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That works really good. So, and from Garland's book too, Mycenaean Greek. So the Mycenaeans, if I just remember this right, were the ones that besieged Troy. These were kind of like the first people to start really ramping up Greek identity and converging Mediterranean identity in a way, which that majorly happened later once the Romans kind of took over. But a really cool thing here, because I don't know if you've thought this, but whenever I heard of the Phoenician Society, the ancient society, so I'm gonna verbatim here from Wikipedia. So that word ponike is probably a borrowing from a West Semitic word for a madder, a red dye from the Rubia tinctorum. The word Phoenician appears to be from the same root, meaning those who work with red dyes. So phoenix may mean the Phoenician bird or the purplish red bird. So that might be the word phoenix, Phoenician. That might be people who work with dye. And just for the sake of timing, in the book with Garland that I'm listening to on kind of the entanglement of Greek and Roman culture, he mentions them, the Phoenicians, because they're really important, because the Greeks, the people of then, they once they started trading more with the Phoenicians, they saw their alphabet and were like, that's great. And they took that alphabet, and then, you know, that evolved later. But he mentions how the Phoenicians did export dyes. Boom. That was just kind of crazy for me. I was reading, I was like, oh my God, I just had a smart Oxford scholar like tell me this. So there's the connection there to the Phoenician and the Phoenician Empire, the Phoenician people, and the phoenix. It likely has to do with the dye, and like, as a Phoenician means those who work with red dyes. They have that same root. So I was always wondering that. And again, this is a red dye. The phoenix is usually depicted with fire colors of red and yellow, things like that. Very beautiful and elegant. And so I was really pleased to kind of make that or see that that's the connection that's made essentially. And then again, so yeah, from Phoenician to Greek to Latin, and then thanks to some French, that's how we have the word phoenix in its meaning today. Although today it essentially just means this mythological birb. So that's essentially it. I mean, there's tons of art. There's tons of other writings, of course, that I mentioned, but the earliest text that we have of life in for the classical Greeks, they talked about it, and it looks like they talked about it again as being like kind of unnative, but it just sort of got absorbed in the culture. And Greek wasn't unified by far. So every little polis and city had its own kind of set of rules. So not everyone kind of worshipped the same way, but it looks like that sort of did it. But this persisted into the ADs. Rome's doing its thing. It's doesn't know what's going to happen in a couple hundred years when it tumbles a little bit. But we have the great Roman historian and politician Tacitus. He was AD 56 to 120. He specifically wrote about it, saying that its color made it stand out from all other birds. Herodotus, Pliny Solinus, there we go. Yeah, I've already mentioned those, and Philostratus. So they specifically, those were all BC, but they described the phoenix as similar size to an eagle. Other dramatists from that the BCE period claim that the phoenix was larger than an eagle, declaring it was even larger than an ostrich. So it was kind of debated by that. And some of the other cultures, so the analogs, if you think of like a griffin and things like that, griffins were sort of depicted as being huge too. So if the word phoenix is tied to the word for griffin, maybe this sort of maybe there wasn't the phoenix, but phoenix could have referred to a bird, and that bird was just big as hell. So, but it took a new meaning in the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, and was depicted in art. You can see it sometimes even having a halo, which I thought was really interesting. There's a lot of like Christianity sort of sentiment there with rebirth in general. Yeah, I mean that's a huge thing, and the halo, it kind of reminds me of the sun and light. I thought another cool thing too was what is it? There's a connection to Zoroastrianism. Yeah, there's the Persian. One of the analogous birds is the Persian huma, or bird of paradise. It consumes itself in fire every few hundred years, only to rise anew from the ashes. And I thought this was interesting because there's Zoroastrianism is a really old religion, Persian religion, and in one of the Byzantine books I read from Lars Brownworth, the Byzantines had to work with the Zoroastrists, and he called them the fire worshippers. That was kind of that they fire is very pure. It's purifying. It's very sacred. I don't even think they would like burn carcasses because that like muddied the fire and stuff like that. So it totally makes sense that a bird that consumes itself in its own fire, that's a very special and pure sort of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. There's also signs of the phoenix being in Arabia or West Asia, sort of the Middle East as we know it. The bird at dawn, it bathed in the water of a well. And the Greek sun god Apollo stopped his chariot in order to listen to its song. There's another couple connections that are famous. The Garuda of India, the firebird of Vishnu. I've heard of Garuda before in like Final Fantasy, other games. They've used that before. And the Chinese Feng Huang, which also might be kind of tied to, but I don't think it's interesting. It's a firebird. And in Japan has borrows that Feng Huang as Ho-Oh, which is a Pokemon, like legit. I was like, oh, that's the Pokemon. And I don't really see that. I don't know how, you could kind of believe the story of the Phoenix, Bennu turning into Phoenix and then kind of going into Persia. That's pretty easy. Even India, thanks to Alexander the Great. It's sort of understanding that, but it's hard to say, like, did they receive it from the Phoenix and from Bennu, or did they have it before? Is this a mytheme where it's an independent idea that's happening that's similar of a firebird, or was it something that was spread and disseminated to these places and they're like, oh, it's kind of tough to say, but it's just really interesting that a strong character, a firebird was around in all of these places. So it's great. I really, you can get lost in this. I was really happy to see that, how strong this myth is, how it is essentially a mytheme of a firebird. There's tons of little like podcasts we could do on these other birds, but the Phoenix really has the connection to Bennu, an Egyptian firebird. And just the cool thing is all of these birds, especially in around the Mediterranean, Egypt and such, and Persia, they have the rebirth through fire. So I've yapped enough. I think I'll leave it there. The big thing for me, other than that, was of course the connection to the Phoenicians as well, they were an ancient society. If you don't know that, in the Mediterranean, that like weren't Greek, they weren't Roman, but they were a part of that orbit for some time. And they were again, they gave us they gave the Greeks the alphabet, which, as you can, you likely know, the Latin and modern English kind of stems from in a lot of ways. So yeah, really, Cammy decided to do this, and it was great. I mean, it's such a well-known myth, but or it's such a known myth, not well-known, but everybody knows what a phoenix is thanks to J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. But it really has some super deep ties, which is just really cool. So awesome. Well, Cammy, thank you so much for your story on that. Everyone, if you know anything about Firebirds that aren't vehicles, please let us know. Or if you really like cars, we can do a car talk episode. But I think that about does it, Cammy. What have I missed?
Rate, review, subscribe.
Yeah.
Find us on Twitter and Insta at Mythstorie. That's with an IE. You can go to mythstorie.threadless.com and buy swag.
That's right. And watch us on YouTube too. We've been streaming now through StreamYard, pretty good quality now. So take a look on there if you'd like. If you do, of course, remember thumbs upping and subscribing helps us get out there.
Speaking of that too, we are going to start doing with Popular Opinion YouTube channel a separate, I guess, what would you call it? Stream? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll be doing videos with Cody on his show, Popular Opinion. Yep, we did.
Made that so much easier. I don't know why I made it.
No, yeah, it's a little different. Yeah, we did the Wheel of Misfortune. That was a lot of fun. We don't have that available on our channel, but you can check out Cody through us. He's a part of our community, and that was fun. And we're going to do some stuff based off of, because there's tons of pops that are based off of mythological figures too. So that'll be really fun, and we'll make it all work. So yeah. Very good call out, Cammy. That's why I have you here. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. Let us know what you think, and we will see you next time.
Oh.